Most films act as a crescendo. As the plot moves along, stakes get higher, the action intensifies, and the audience gets more invested.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
And at the end of this crescendo, filmmakers have two choices: climax or anticlimax. What a filmmaker chooses will change how an audience perceives the entire movie.
That was unexpected.
This is What Is? Climax versus Anticlimax. Before we enter our own crescendo, subscribe to Studio Binder and enable notifications to stay up to date on all our videos.
You know how much I sacrificed?
Because we're talking about the ending of movies, we'll be spoiling the following titles. There's also going to be a bit of violence ahead. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's begin. A climax is a beat of a story where a crisis comes to a head and is resolved. It is the culmination of a narrative that punctuates its ending. Typically, climaxes are also the most intense or exciting moments of stories. An anticlimax, meanwhile, is an abrupt come-down that undercuts or subverts what a narrative has been building to. It is usually where a climax would be. Anticlimax can carry a negative connotation, since people associate it with disappointment. But an anticlimax can be just as effective as its more conventional counterpart. As screenwriting expert Robert McKee notes, an ending must be both inevitable and unexpected.
I am inevitable.
This can be achieved with either a climax or anticlimax. It all depends on the kind of film you are building.
And I am Iron Man.
The decision between climax and anticlimax isn't the only one you'll have to make.
Come along, Mrs. Thornhill.
Let's look at some types of climaxes. To decide which form of climax to use, a filmmaker needs to understand the story they are telling. What is the core issue that must be resolved?
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
One type of climax is the plot twist, a sudden and unexpected revelation that dramatically alters the story. Plot twists are great for thrillers and mysteries, since they can deliver a shocking answer to what the main characters have been trying to find out for the majority of the story. In The Others, the climax occurs during a séance, where the woman thought to be a ghost is revealed to actually be a psychic, and it is Grace and her children who are the ghosts.
Something about a pillow.
Is that how she killed you?
This revelation is unexpected, but it also resolves the story, answering the question Grace has been asking the entire film. Who are these intruders? Action movies, meanwhile, will often present their climax in a large set piece. This sequence may not necessarily be bigger than other set pieces in the film, but it is where the stakes are the highest. The Northman's climax is a grueling final battle between the protagonist and the antagonist. Amleth has worked nearly his entire life to get his revenge.
I will avenge you, father! I will save you, mother! I will kill you, Fiona!
And now, finally, it is within his grasp. This climax both resolves the core drive of the film, while also hitting on the primary theme that revenge will cost you everything. dramas will often opt for an emotional climax, revolving around intense feelings and emotional truths.
I want to go home.
You know what? I miss Minnesota too.
These can be scenes that we usually describe as tearjerkers. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the climax is a simple conversation.
Wait.
The characters decide to give their relationship another shot, even though they know it may be doomed to fail.
And I'll get bored with you and feel trapped because that's what happens with me.
Okay.
It's an emotionally resonant moment that speaks to the core concern of the film, whether it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. Character-driven films will typically find their climax within their protagonist's character arc, highlighting personal growth or evolution. In The King's Speech, King George works to overcome his stuttering.
Waiting for me to commence a conversation, one can wait rather a long wait.
The climactic scene, therefore, has George giving a crucial speech, showing how far he's come.
We are at war.
But the scene also cements the heart of the film. The relationship between George and his speech therapist, Lionel.
With God's help, we shall prevail.
It's very good, Bertie.
Climaxes can look wildly different, depending on their context. But all climaxes operate as the pinnacle of what has come before them. This is where their counterpart differs. Let's look at some types of anticlimaxes.
That's it? No explosions, no hellfire, no...
While anticlimaxes deliberately do not serve as an apex to a story, they will still deliver on the core themes and ideas of the narrative.
We can still make it.
No, I can't.
In other words, a good anticlimax may be unexpected, but it makes sense in the larger context of the film. No Country for Old Men, for example, seems to be building towards a confrontation between Anton Chigurh and Llewellyn Moss. But Moss is killed off screen by random criminals.
Call the police. Llámate la policía.
This is unexpected and anticlimactic, but it builds on the themes the Coen brothers are investigating, like fate and the unpredictability of death.
You know what date is on this coin? No. 1958. It's been traveling 22 years to get here. And now it's here. And it's either heads or tails. And you have to say, call it.
A common type of anticlimax is the abrupt ending. These are endings that come seemingly out of nowhere. In The Birds, for example, the titular antagonists suddenly stop attacking humans without explanation. This abrupt ending makes the film all the more unnerving. The birds attacked humankind out of nowhere. So what's to say they won't do it again? Abrupt anticlimaxes can result in very effective cliffhangers. In The Thing, we never find out if Macready or Childs are infected. This cliffhanger is fitting, however, as it punctuates the themes of paranoia and mistrust present throughout the film.
Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired.
There is also the mundane anticlimax, where a movie has been building toward a seemingly significant event, which is then revealed to be unimportant. The Coen brothers are big fans of this kind of ending. In Burn After Reading, for example, the intricate plot of blackmailing, espionage, and infidelity is revealed to be totally insignificant.
You want to come downstairs? You like surprises?
This anticlimax highlights the absurdity of all the characters' quests.
What do we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't know either.
Then there is the ambiguous anticlimax, where the ending leaves lots of questions unanswered. This type of ending can often be found in more experimental, philosophical films which ask profound questions that might not have an easy answer. 2001: A Space Odyssey, for example, has an ending which can be left up to interpretation. It doesn't wrap anything up in a neat bow, but it feels fittingly opaque for the intergalactic epic. Sometimes a climax may be subverted by events afterward that make it feel more like an anticlimax. In The Graduate, we see what seems like a conventional rom-com climax, where the two characters unite. But the final shot makes it an anticlimax. It is unclear what the future holds for these characters. There can also be anticlimactic character arcs. These are endings where a character appears to be on track to change, but in the end, they don't.
We all need mirrors to remind ourselves who we are. I'm no different.
Deus Ex Machina can function as an often controversial anticlimax.
That hurts!
These are endings where an outside force comes in to save the day at the last minute. Done poorly, they can feel undeserved and overly convenient.
They were undone, destroyed, after all of man's weapons and devices had failed, by the tiniest creatures that God in his wisdom put upon this earth.
And lastly, there is the parodic anticlimax. Comedies and satires use this to poke fun at the conventional structure of films, deliberately subverting audience expectations. Perhaps the most famous example of this can be found in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which has a meta-ending that completely derails the plot. But it works perfectly in a movie which is consistently poking fun at conventions. With a firm understanding of climax and anticlimax under our belt, it's time to look at where they can be found. Climaxes and anticlimaxes don't have to refer to a film's end. Smaller versions of them can occur throughout a story, creating a narrative dynamism. This climactic sequence from Roland Emmerich's 2012 takes place at the end of the first hour of the film. Many scenes, for example, build to their own minor climax or anticlimax. Steven Spielberg has used both. In this scene from Jurassic Park, tension builds as the kids evade the velociraptors. And the scene's climax is when the raptors charge at them, cashing in on the suspense. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, meanwhile, Spielberg builds tension by showing off how formidable Indy's opponents are, which makes this ending all the more anticlimactic. There can also be act climaxes, transitions into the next act. Mad Max Fury Road ends its second act with an anticlimax. The green place that Furiosa has been searching for most of the film is revealed to have been destroyed.
The soil.
We had to get out.
We had no water, and
The water was filth.
it was poisoned. It was sour.
And then the crows came.
It's an anticlimax because it shows her goal has been futile, but it too sets up the final act, where they will head back toward the Citadel and battle Immortan Joe and his allies. And finally, there is the story climax, which typically occurs halfway through the third and final act. In The Iron Claw, the climax occurs when Kevin has a vision of his siblings in the afterlife, just after another one of them has died. It is a somber ending, but the remainder of the film builds a more uplifting note, showing Kevin building and appreciating a family of his own.
Oh. Hey.
Anticlimaxes, however, typically happen closer to the very end, since their subversion of audience expectations is usually what the filmmaker wants to end on.
What's so funny?
Just think of a joke.
The French Connection ends just after the botched raid. The audience is then presented with simple title cards, which emphasize just how much of a failure the case was. It is a stark rebuke to a Hollywood ending, fitting for a film which prides itself on its realism. Creating and identifying climaxes and anticlimaxes throughout your film will create a more textured and riveting narrative, filled with ups and downs.
I'm happy to finally meet you.
The choice between climax and anticlimax depends on the story you are telling and the message you want to deliver. But remember, a film can be filled with small climaxes and anticlimaxes.
This is Sparta!
You don't have to focus on just one. Start crafting your peaks and valleys with Studio Binder's screenwriting software. And visit our Studio Binder Academy channel for tutorials and in-depth interviews. If you couldn't already tell, that was our climax. See you next time.
Howard, it's Bateman, Patrick Bateman. You're my lawyer, so I think you should know I've killed a lot of people.